Hello and welcome to Telltales TV. I'm Shouty TV anchorman Archie Sootherin. Tonight we'll be talking about drugs, their history, where they come from and their effects on society. Later in the show we'll be showing an interview I did earlier with a real-life drug addict, going to the streets of our great city to talk to our crime correspondent Peter Burrough, and discovering where drugs come from. But first, let's explore the history of drugs. Drugs have been used throughout history. Scientists have discovered that even prehistoric man liked to get high on drugs in the Stone Age. Experts believe that ceramic bowls and tubers were used by South American tribes to inhale cohoba as early as 400 BC, possibly to induce religious trances. Ancient Greeks and Romans took many drugs such as cannabis and opium for religious ceremonies, medical uses and before going into battle. There are also records of cannabis use in the ancient Middle East, and in the early Middle Ages Arab traders introduced the use of the opium poppy to India and China. Opium, which comes from poppy flowers, was a popular drug amongst wealthy Victorians. One of the most famous opium users was the fictional detective Sherlock Holmes, and Florence Nightingale also used opium products. There were secret opium dens all around London. The Victorians took many recreational drugs which they could buy at Boots, the chemist, and which they took in their homes all over the country. The most popular drug was laudanum, a cocktail of opium and alcohol which is still used as a medicine today. Opium was a drug of the people. It was easier to get hold of in the 19th century than packets of cigarettes are today. Our modern anti-drug laws first appeared during World War I. The government was nervous that the packets of heroin gel that women were buying from Harrods to send to their sweethearts at the Western Front were having a bad effect on discipline. So drug use has been around for centuries, but today it's a bigger problem than ever. Now, let's go over to our crime correspondent Peter Burrough in the city centre to find out what's happening today.
Thank you, Archie. I'm here in the city's park at night, a quiet and secluded spot well known as a place where drug dealing and drug taking happen. Drug users text their dealers and arrange to meet in quiet places like this where they quickly exchange cash for drugs. Drugs are often taken here too. They are smoked or injected using needles which are strewn on the ground. These are extremely dangerous to children, pets and other passers-by. There are many problems associated with drug taking, and it's not just the effect of the drug itself. Drug users can catch diseases like AIDS and hepatitis from using dirty needles. They lack concentration and energy, so they neglect their personal hygiene. They don't eat or sleep properly either, and all these effects combine to make them unhealthy and prone to other illnesses. There is also the danger of overdosing, which can lead to coma and even death from respiratory failure. That's it from the city park. Back to you in the studio, Archie.
Thank you, Pete, for that interesting report. Yesterday I interviewed a real-life drug addict called Ivor Habit at a rehabilitation centre in the city. Here's what he had to say. I'm here at the city rehabilitation centre to meet with ex-drug addict Ivor Habit. So Ivor, what was the first drug you took?
Started smoking cannabis with my mates. We all thought we were so cool, and because cannabis wasn't considered very dangerous, we didn't even think about the long-term effects.
So, how did you feel the first time you took drugs?
I felt amazing after the first dose. That's why I went back for more, and why I I'm sure I was hooked within a couple of weeks. The problem is you need more and more of the drug to get the same effect, and eventually you crave something stronger. That's when I moved on to harder Class A drugs.
Interesting. So, what drug did you move on to?
Well, I was so hooked on cannabis that I lost my job, so I was skint. Then my drug dealer gave me some free crack cocaine. I thought he was being nice, but it was a trick. He knew I would soon be addicted and then I'd have to buy more drugs from him. I eventually ended up on heroin.
So, what is the average cost of drugs at the moment?
Well, about 20 or 30 quid for the good ones and about a fiver for the cheap ones. The problem is the cheap drugs are bulked up with all sorts of other chemicals like aspirin or baking powder, so you have to buy more of them to get the same effect.
If you didn't have a job, how did you afford to buy your drugs?
I used to steal anything I could get and sell it. I stole my mum's jewellery and my best friend's PS3. I couldn't help myself, I just needed the money to buy drugs. So I ended up losing all my friends and even my family didn't want me around. Drugs ruined my life and I almost ended up in prison.
Finally, what made you quit drugs?
My family gave me one last chance as long as I quit drugs. The doctors put me on methadone and have just weaned me off heroin. Just yesterday I stopped taking drugs altogether. Now I'm going to be clean and I'll enjoy life again, but it's been a very long, hard journey, and once you've been an addict, there's always a danger you could go back.
Thank you, Ivor. Good luck. Now, back to the studio. So, drugs are all over the UK, but where do they all come from? Some drugs are grown in the UK, but most are smuggled in from abroad from hotter climates. Most cocaine comes from the northern countries of South America, such as Colombia. Colombia is the biggest cocaine exporter in the world, and the drug barons there are among the richest people in the world, with their own private armies for protection. A lot of cannabis is also grown in South America. Heroin is smuggled into the United States and Europe from areas such as the Golden Triangle in Southeast Asia and Afghanistan, which is currently the world's largest exporter of heroin. A recent UN report said that the global drug trade was worth an estimated $321.6 billion US dollars. That's the same as the entire economy of Argentina. That is incredible when you realise that drugs are illegal in most countries. But cannabis use is tolerated in some areas, one of the most famous of which is the Netherlands. So, that is the end of our report on drugs. Thank you for watching. Please join us again when we have more tales to tell.